Testing, testing. I think Twitch can hear me now. The due is before class, but because last week was Wednesday, if you need to still send it in, that's all right. For those of you joining us on Twitch, we're just going over class logistics for NYU people. And yes, remember the late policy is 3 late days, no questions asked. You get to submit it the next day. Now, I don't know if Brightspace will still let you submit the assignment or not. If it doesn't, just shoot me an email and I'll figure out how to fix that. It's similar to no one could post topics in the forums. I was wondering why there were no questions on the forums, and that's why. Oh, okay. Well, if Brightspace says it's due midnight tonight, then it's due midnight tonight. Yeah, go and get your homeworks in that case. Let me see. Anything else? There's a hand. Yep. Absolutely. Send me an email and we'll work something out there. And there's a question in chat, which is if we submit it by midnight today, it's not a grace day, and the answer is yes, because I apparently messed up when I set up the due time. So as long as you submit it by midnight tonight, that counts as today, and you didn't use your late day. And then tomorrow you can submit it until midnight for the late day there. Okay. Let's see. Any other questions? One more thing is, so the forums weren't working and they are working now. So I made a separate forum per homework because apparently students can't make those. So you can post homework related questions there, help your fellow students out if they have questions. Once again, that's what this is all about. There's one last thing, which is you should have gotten your homework 1 grades. A few folks sent me emails asking if they could get regrades on various things. I just want to let everyone else know this is a thing you can do. Just send me an email explaining why you think a regrade might be warranted in some case, and I'll take a look and see what I can do. So yeah, that's all the logistics stuff I want to talk about. All right, so let's get started on today's lecture. So we're going to take a slight veer, and we're going to go into some fundamental concepts, concepts that aren't, really specific to Haskell, although Haskell is a really nice language for looking at them. In particular, we are going to look at the Lambda calculus today. So the story behind this is I'm up here in the ivory tower, that is academia, and I am cooking. What am I cooking? Well, I'm cooking Haskell, and I'm trying to distill out the sort of core essence of Haskell. What is it fundamentally underneath all of the extra, added stuff that you typically, add into a programming language, to make it interesting, right? And if you read any academic papers about Haskell, it turns out that Haskell, which is this very large and very complicated surface language, actually reduces down to a simpler language called Core, which has less features. Basically, everything that you can do as a programmer, it translates it into some simplified language, which is more wordy, more verbose, but has less language features. And that makes it easier for the compiler to deal with. But we're not here to talk about core. We're here to distill core down even further. And when we're done distilling, at the end, what we'll find is we will find a very small, very compact language, and that language is the Lambda calculus. So that's the language we're going to talk about today. In fact, it's so small that it only has 3 constructs in it. I've permanently pasted those 3 constructs on the top right side of my my screen, so you can always refer to them later if you want to take a look. So what is the Lambda calculus all about? And so there are a number of things that sort of when we look at the Lambda calculus, because you would never write actual programs in the Lambda calculus. There's just too little stuff. You can, it's a Turing-complete language. Anything that's computable can be done in the Lambda calculus, but in practice, you're never going to do it. So why do we study the Lambda calculus? Well, there are a few things. So one is that the Lambda calculus itself is a very pure, very distilled way to study some very important concepts that show up in a lot of situations. So for one, The lambda calculus is all about this idea of binders, namely the idea that we can assign names to values and then use those names later on, right? Names are ubiquitous in computer science. Indeed, there's the famous saying that, there are three hard problems in computer science: cache invalidation and naming. And the last one is off by 1 error, but you don't put that in because there's 3 errors. And so lambda calculus really lets us look at the concept of names at its very simplest form, and there will be a lot of interesting things that go on when we're talking about naming in a language. The lambda calculus also is a really good vehicle for talking about this concept of capture avoiding substitution. Really, it's a complication that shows up when you're dealing with names and when you're trying to think about how do I actually compute in the presence of names. But capture avoiding substitution is also relevant in the real world. For example, if you're in a cool programming language that has a macro system, so that is to say, you can write programs that produce programs that will actually be used in your code. Capture avoiding substitution is a very important thing to know about, because if you don't know about it, you'll probably write your macros wrong and they won't do the right thing, and you'll wonder, why don't my macros do the right thing? Similarly, if you're ever writing the optimizer for a compiler, well, that's also something that you need to know how to do capture avoiding substitution, because you're going to do manipulations on program text without actually just executing it. And finally, and this is not part of the lecture today, but if I have extra time, we might go over it. The lambda calculus also is a really interesting concept called church encodings. Namely, I claim that the lambda calculus is a Turing-complete language. It can compute anything. So how do you compute integers or booleans or anything if the only thing you have in your language is lambdas? And the answer is church encodings, which basically let you encode what you think as conventional data in the form of functions. And it's not just a sort of funny technical trick that some computer science theoretician used to make things work out. When we looked at, for example, folds in Haskell, and I told you, well, the concept behind a fold is we're replacing all